Hello and welcome to the A Little Spoon Kitchen. Today I'm going to teach you guys how to make the perfect chuck roast chili. Doesn't have to be chuck roast, you can use other cuts of meat. I will go into that all while I am cooking. I'm going to offer a lot of different ways to build flavor and to make substitutions for your tastes. And it's going to be a long one, so buckle up. Let's get going. First, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna put on some gloves, some food safe gloves, because we have to mess around with some dried peppers. And I am actually allergic to peppers. And so I have to be careful getting it on my fingers because the capsaicin sticks to your hands even when you wash your hands with soap. And I have made the mistake of like doing one of these after messing with peppers and was like literally crumbled on the floor in shambles for about an hour, just tears and whatever. So I'm doing this. Honestly, I highly recommend you also do this, even if you don't have an issue with peppers. That's like, especially with dried peppers, it just, that like capsaicin and all of that can just get really sticky. And it doesn't go away very easy, even if you scrub your hands. So I highly recommend getting some gloves and using gloves when you do this, but honestly, it's up to you. We've got a number of dried peppers here. All of this is going to be used to make a chili paste. A lot of chilies will just put straight spices, dried spices, into a pot of chili, and I prefer to make a paste to rehydrate the actual chilies and get their individual flavors. You can mix and match. When it comes to chilies, I do have here with me, and then also on my website at alittlespoon.com, we have a chili chart in one of the FAQs that lists off some of the chilies that I'm using today. I have kind of a flavor balance that I prefer, but I've listed a bunch of other chilies here that give both a description of what they taste like, what pepper they're made from, the Scoville unit, if it's considered mild, hot, like that kind of a thing, so that you can kind of do your own thing. I've kind of come up with a ratio of somewhere between 65 and 70 grams worth of dried chili, with about 1.5 cups of or 360 mils of a chicken stock to create that paste consistency that is needed for a chili paste. And then you can kind of just have fun with whatever you want to do. The chili that I am making today, I will say, I know I have a lot of peppers here, but the chili that I'm making today is not spicy. It's just flavorful, and that's fine. I have kids. If you want to add spice, I highly recommend, and I will, as I go through some of the chilies that I'm using, I can recommend stuff. But you can also add like cayenne pepper, and you can also add like some fresh habanero or serrano or something like that into it just to kind of kick up the spice, if that's something that you want to do. So the kind of the same way that you have like a holy trinity in French cooking, or in like Cajun cooking or something like that. So like, you have your onions, you have your celery, and you have your carrots, or green pepper if we're kind of switching stuff out. We have a very similar trio when it comes to chili pastes, and like salsa machas and things like that. You have your pasilla, your guajillo, and your ancho chilies. Okay, most chili pastes that you find, or most of the time when people are using dried chilies for some kind of sauce, whether that be a mole or that be like say you're making like a sauce for enchiladas or something like that, you're gonna find those 3 chilies somewhere in there. They blend very well together. You get a really nice balance between fruitiness, acidity, and earthiness when you're using those 3. And then you might also find chile de árbol. They're kind of thin, smaller chilies. These are what would be considered the spicier version of a dried chili. I know there are spicier ones out there, but this is kind of where you would pull your heat from. And then I'm also going to be using, I did not have access to these where I lived last when I was in Florida, but they have them here. This is probably my favorite chili, dried chili. They're called morita chilies, and they're super fruity and a little smoky, and it's just a really, really nice flavor that I add into my chili paste for the overall flavor of the chili. But you can play around. I've got some puya chilies. You can get like some dried California chilies. There's like a whole bunch of different kinds. But this is just kind of my preferred flavor profile. But like I said, if you go into the website and you want to read through some of the chilies that are available, dried chilies, you can find them online. You can probably find them at your local grocery stores. And then you can kind of pick and choose what you would like to use based on that chart. Okay, so let's move forward. I'm going to do 2 of the pasilla chilies. Okay, we're gonna pull some out. And I'm just gonna start setting stuff elsewhere. I've got a garbage can next to me. And honestly, I kind of want to work over a plate before I put this into the pan. So we're gonna grab a plate too, even just a little guy. And what you're gonna do is I'm gonna do this for all of the chilies, is you're gonna take the top off, okay? And you're gonna dump all of the seeds and keep the skin. If you want some additional spice, you can keep the seeds. I tend not to because, again, I'm not trying to make this spicy, but that could also be another option for you. Oh, welcome to the people who are rating this stream right now. If you find this video at a later date, which some of you might, this was previously a live stream. Right now it is a video, but you will see me talking. I have a chat here. They're going to be asking me questions. I'm kind of going to be doing my thing, but also looking here and answering things. I just had a bunch of people join our live, so I'm saying hello to them. Welcome, welcome. Okay. You're here for your weekly cooking experience. Love it. The monthly. We do this if for those of you who are here while this is a video and not live. These cook-alongs happen on the first Sunday of every month at 12:30 Eastern time zone in the United States. That is where I am from. Okay. I'm basically breaking these up. I'm not trying to keep the peppers whole because I am going to move them over to this stainless steel pan here, and I am going to toast. I'm going to both toast some spices and the peppers that I'm currently kind of emptying out. And if you have really big pieces of pepper, they just don't toast as well. You don't get all of it. Okay. So those are our pastillas. Let's grab some anchos. And each pepper is going to have like a different texture. I find that the guajillo and the pasilla peppers are a little bit thinner in their skin, and so are the chiles de árbol. And then the pasilla and the morita peppers are a little bit thicker, and they're not quite as dried out. And you can immediately smell kind of what's going on with the peppers. I highly recommend, honestly, like just go to your store, buy the 3 peppers, the anchos, the pasilla, and the guajillo. And then like, if you want to, if you see something on the list or you see a pepper and you're not quite sure what it's going to, like if you want to use it or not, buy the bag. And when you open it, you'll be able to tell, you'll be able to immediately tell whether or not you want it there. Sometimes you'll also, actually, this is a really important point. I think I kept this bag specifically for this. Sometimes you will see pasilla ancho on a package and you're like, okay, cool. What does that mean? These are actually anchos. If it says ancho, it's ancho. Even if pasilla is written there, it is an ancho. And just try to ignore it. If you really are scared about not buying the right pepper, you can go online and specifically like type in, I want anchos, and then you'll find them. But I don't know why that's a thing, but it sometimes is. So. Okay, and we need 3 of these guys. Almost done. If people keep the seeds in, you highly recommend straining the chili paste after blending. Massively helps the texture. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I go through this process, not only for spice levels, but also I find, and this is part of the reason why I make this paste, right? So it's like you rehydrate the skins of the dried peppers, and then you blend it with the chicken stock specifically to create a better texture. When you're adding like a 1/4 cup, 60 mils by volume of like, chili powder or something to get the same, not only is it a blend, and so you don't get to control the flavors that you want in your chili because it's just a powder that you buy like at the store. It's also kind of gritty, and the seeds will also do that because they're not going to hydrate. The skin hydrates, the seeds really don't. So, yeah. I think I got all that. Okay, and then I want to do 2 morita peppers today. These are a little bit, honestly, we're all still in mild territory, but they're a little bit spicier than our trio here. I need some scissors. This one's not open yet. I do want to use 2. I love the flavor of these peppers. Honestly, I'm really happy that I now know they exist, to be very, very frank. You like that? Yeah. For my chili Colorado, I only ever use rehydrated chilies for the same reason as you, but I like the heat. Even with a Vitamix, I need to strain the chili because I like the spice from the seeds. Yeah. Yeah, I've got my Vitamix up here right now. I have 2 blenders. One for upstairs and one for downstairs. The upstairs one is the nicer one though. This blender's like 10 years old, honestly. It was such a good blender. It's in its last leg, but I can't let things go. So these smell so good. I love how fruity and smoky these peppers smell. You can add more. I mean, the ratio that I use of the like 65, 70 grams worth of pepper to 360 mils, cup and a half of chicken stock is just for paste consistency. If you wanted to add more peppers, you totally could. You just have to be aware that the more paste you add, the less the other ingredients that you're adding to kind of like add depth of flavor will kind of like disappear, and you would have to use more of that to then have it show, and then you just end up making more chili. So like getting the balance is kind of like kind of a thing to work on. Okay, and then the last one, I'm gonna do 2 of these too. Why not? Let's do it. My kids can suffer. They'll be fine. It's actually not that spicy. They'll be good. Maybe. Okay. But you see, like, they're so dry. Oops. There we go. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is toast these guys. I feel like I ripped them pretty well. Okay, let's see. Actually, Luke likes spice, is better with spice than Kate is for my kids. Okay, you're going to want your pan to be at like medium, maybe medium high heat. If it's at medium high heat, just be careful So what you're gonna do is you're gonna start to smell the peppers toasting a little bit. If it starts to smell bitter, you've gone too far. It does not take long. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to toss them into the top of this blender. And I'm gonna add the chicken stock to it to start getting them to hydrate. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes. You could leave it, honestly, you could leave it as long as you want, but a minimum 15 to 20 minutes of your peppers sitting in your hot chicken stock in order for it to properly hydrate. We're also going to toast some black peppercorns and some cumin in just a minute, and that is also going to go in here. Does anybody have any questions so far? Are we in a good place? Slight static from the stovetop. Okay, I'll back up a little bit. There's a brand called Barker's that has dried New Mexico chilies that I adore. Ooh, okay. Their hot variant is a great combo of spice and flavor. You can get them on Amazon, but they're a bit pricier compared to what you might find in a grocery store. You used to have to order them in Hawaii when I didn't want flavor of the chili, the árbol, but wanted the heat. Right. Yeah, right now the only option that I have is the chili de árbol to add some heat, unless I'm adding in like fresh peppers. You're gonna get tips now and then make recipe next week when the temperatures drop again. Yeah, what's with the weather, guys? Why is it 60 degrees in Colorado? Like, come on. Okay, so I'm smelling them toasting. So see, like, that takes like a minute and a half. Like we're already getting a little bit of that nice toastiness. We're not smoking and there's no smoke coming off the pan. Just nice, gentle, getting kind of some coverage. I think these are about done. Okay, we're gonna add them. And I'm actually gonna turn this off while I get the chicken stock together. Because I'm gonna put the toasted spices in as well, but I wanna get the liquid in this as soon as I can. So we're going to grab, I think this is hot. I've got my chicken stock over here. I'm gonna get that. That should be hot. It's just liquid sitting in a pot back there. And it looks like it's just about ready to boil. I want that to just be at least boiling, not like rolling boil. We don't have to go crazy. But you do want it to be hot. It's going to hydrate faster than if you had put a cold liquid in here. It'll open up all the pores in the dehydrated skin of the peppers, and it's just gonna all around work faster, be better, that whole kind of thing. Get that. I need about a cup and a half of the chicken stock. That's 360 mils. As I said before, I'm honestly not gonna measure too crazy. You need about 5 cups total of chicken stock. It's about 1.2 liters of chicken stock total in order to make this chili. I've got most of that in that pot. I've got one more I have to pull out and heat up. Yeah, the higher elevation messes with the boiling temp here. If you're at sea level, it's 212 Fahrenheit, and here it's 204 to boiling. And it's even lower if you get higher up. Okay, I'm seeing some steam come off of this. We're at a good. Okay, so So what you're gonna wanna do, let me get like a spoon or a fork or something, is you're gonna wanna kind of tamp down the peppers and make sure that all of the skin is underneath the liquid, right? Because we wanna make sure that all of it is getting rehydrated. Especially the peppers with the thicker skin. Okay. And we're just gonna let that sit while I do the rest of the peppers, or the rest of the spices. Okay. Cool. I've got more stuff that I'm gonna put into this because this is my chili paste. And this is one of those things where like we toasted it, we're rehydrating it, we're gonna blend it, and then it's actually gonna go back into the pot when we're starting to kind of really like sear the meat and get all of those, like get a fond, like a really nice fond built up on the bottom of the pot. This is going to get cooked again. And instead of kind of separating out this specific chili paste and then like all of the other like umami kind of ingredients that I'm adding for flavor, I'm just gonna blend it all together. And then that whole thing is gonna get put in the pot. So I've got some anchovies, I've got some other powders and things like that, some tomato paste. It's all gonna get added into my chili paste here. And I am gonna take these gloves off because I am like even getting fumes from my fingers. That's so funny. Gloves are off. We're getting down to business, right? Okay, I'm gonna move all of my peppers out of the way now that we've done that. Okay. Now we're gonna do our black pepper and our cumin. Gloves are off. Okay, so I'm gonna do a half of a teaspoon or 1.3 grams of whole black peppercorn. If you really wanna use like pre-ground pepper, you can. You can toast instead of like putting pre-ground pepper right in and just having it be whatever flavor it is. I can pull some of the oils out of the whole peppercorns and toast them, and it just adds a little extra flavor, right? So we're all about doing small things that are just going to help build flavor and make this a stronger, more lovely tasting chili. So we're gonna do our black peppercorns, and then we're gonna need 2 tablespoons of cumin seeds. I buy my spices from like Middle Eastern or Asian markets or things like that instead of going to the grocery store for them. They're so much cheaper. Whoops. Okay, why not? That seems about right. It doesn't have to be exact. It's a stew. We're not baking. If I feel like it needs a little more something, we'll figure it out later. Let me wipe this up into this. But yeah, I think this bag of cumin, I want to say I spent like, let's see, $6.99, $7 on all this. And I go through it so fast that it's like, it just doesn't make sense to go to the store and spend $4 or $5 on a tiny little 2-ounce jar. So that's what we do instead. Okay, so we're gonna turn this back on. We're gonna toast this up too. And then that is also gonna get added into our blender bowl. Soon, Spartan, soon. We will be searing the chuck meat soon. Trimming and searing. And again, you're gonna be able to smell the spices start to toast. They might pick up a little bit of color, but you don't want it to start smelling like actual smoke or any bitterness. Doesn't take long. Especially on like there, we're there. Especially on like a medium. Okay. And now I'm gonna set this here. Okay. Now we're gonna do the rest of the umami ingredients that is going to get added kind of into our paste. So I'm still gonna keep this here and we're just gonna keep kind of adding to it, right? So as our peppers hydrate, we're just gonna keep adding stuff that's gonna go into the paste. And I am gonna move this out of the way because I do not need this right now. And that way this all can be front and center and we can have a chat about the different ingredients that I am adding. Okay, so at this point, I'm tossing in some garlic. That's an easy decision. I've got 6 cloves of garlic here. It's about 14 grams worth of garlic. And I am actually gonna cut off the very ends. And those are just gonna go in because it's a blender and it's gonna do its job. So I don't have to grate anything. I don't have to chop or mince or whatever. It's just going into the blender. You wanna use roasted garlic, you can use some roasted garlic for this. It is going to have a less astringent garlic flavor. Roasted garlic is a little bit sweeter and a little less pungent, but you are welcome to use that instead. Really up to you. I would recommend using a little bit more roasted garlic if you're doing a roasted garlic because it doesn't have quite as much flavor. So that's kind of something to consider. And then I'm gonna add some anchovy. I'm going to add a single anchovy to this. If you are terrified of anchovies, that's okay. You don't have to add an anchovy. I like the brininess that it adds to the dish. If you want to use some Worcestershire, I'm sure you probably have some of that in your house. That has anchovy in it. Hate to burst your bubble. But that you can add maybe like a tablespoon or something of Worcestershire and get just as much of that anchovy flavor in that as you would with using an anchovy. So yeah. And then we're gonna do I'm gonna do mushroom powder. I get my mushroom powder from Trader Joe's. I've seen it elsewhere. It's labeled umami powder at Trader Joe's. But I do think that the meatiness of mushrooms pairs really well in a chili. And so I've got a mushroom powder and I will be adding a little bit of that as well. That's gonna be a half of a tablespoon or about 3.5 grams. Okay. You have no issue with anchovy already in food. I have issues with using it whole yourself. You can get, honestly, if it's kind of weird to just like have like little individual like anchovy fillets and like freaks you out a little bit, get a paste. Just get a tube of anchovy paste and do that. I think it's about a teaspoon of anchovy paste per anchovy fillet. It's gonna be somewhere between 2.5 and it's probably gonna be somewhere between like 2.2 and 2.5 grams worth of anchovy paste is gonna give you an anchovy. So you can do that. Like if it like freaks you out to have like a fillet, just get a little tube of paste and use that. But yeah, you can use Worcestershire if you're nervous about it. Fish sauce is another thing, or oyster sauce. Those also give a little bit of that like briny fishiness that you otherwise like would not have if you had left it out. But those are also options. I tend to go strictly with the anchovies or with the Worcestershire just because they are more savory flavors. I feel like you have to be really careful with fish sauce. It's easy to overwhelm a sauce with fish sauce. You have to be very careful there if you are going to play with that. And then oyster sauce is sweet. And it really, really does lean into a more like Asian flavor profile, which I'm not going for. I'm going more savory corn, like on like a salty kind of side. The oyster sauce kind of goes the opposite direction. So just flavor wise, you can use those, but I don't know, you may or may not taste a kind of like a difference there. It's just easier to use just like a straight anchovy, in my opinion. Yeah, fish sauce is very fishy. But yeah, I love fish sauce. I love oyster sauce. But I use them in their own kind of situations. So, but I also am that person that uses like hot sauce, like different hot sauces for different situations. So you know, because the flavor profile is different. So, you know, I've got like a couple different hot sauces, a couple different, like, it's a thing. I have like a whole, like 75% of my refrigerator are sauces and condiments of all different things in like different areas. So it's like, you know, this is basic, you know, kind of whatever. I've got like a whole thing for like Asian kind of style sauces and then a whole nother thing for like, it's great. So, you know, it is what it is. Now I'm going to add, actually, let's do this real quick. I'm going to also add in some natural cocoa powder. Okay, that's this guy right here, 100% cocoa, unsweetened cocoa. I am not using Dutch process cocoa. I'm also not using the black cocoa powder, and I am not using chocolate. You could do 100% chocolate and get a similar flavor profile, but there's still a sweetness to this that you do not have in here. And so I am kind of like avoiding them. I do like the natural cocoa because it's more acidic and it's a little bit more floral, which I think plays really well with the peppers that we've added. So like we're making this chili paste, right? And so I want to play in with that, and I want to stick to something that's a little bit more acidic. The Dutch process alkalizes the cocoa powder, and it neutralizes that acidity and the like floral flavors that are in this. And in my opinion, it makes it a little bit too earthy. And I think it drags down the flavor of the dish. So I didn't add this. I did try, when I was doing recipe development, I did try some chocolate in it, and I did not like the flavor as much as I did with the unsweetened 100% cocoa powder. So I stuck with the cocoa powder. It's really up to you. You could toss in, I know a lot of people swear by tossing in a square of chocolate and just doing like a little wafer, just toss her in. 5 grams or something like that worth of chocolate, nothing crazy. To kind of, again, like build a little bit on that flavor, add some depth and some sweetness. But I found it to be not the direction that I wanted to go. So I stuck with this guy. So I'm gonna need a tablespoon of this, which is, let's say, 7 grams of my natural cocoa powder. That is also getting tossed in. Okay. And then this, I feel like you can probably find this at grocery stores. If you're in certain southern states, maybe. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to find this in somewhere like in New York or Minnesota, or like somewhere kind of like in a like northern area. This is annatto paste or achiote paste. It is made by annatto seeds. I don't know if you've ever had like pubille or something like that uses the annatto seeds. They're like little red seeds that look they're shaped kind of like little bells. And they get ground up. If you find the paste, it obviously has other things in it. And it is really, really bright. And very, very flavorful. And I kind of think about using this in the way that I would use, it's almost like if you were going to do like a tajin, where it's got like a little bit of that chili and then a lot of like salty, tart lime. It's kind of a similar flavor profile, and I really, really like it in this chili. So yeah. Okay. I'm going to be using a half a tablespoon of this, which is about 10 grams. And it is a paste, so I'm just going to kind of press it in, pack it down into this guy, and then we're going to use that. So I usually use a kitchen scale. I'm a little less worried about a kitchen scale when it comes to chili, so I'm just kind of going by volume. There's just so many smaller ingredients in this that it just felt a little easier to go with volumetric measurements this time for me. Now we're gonna do tomato paste and we're gonna do Marmite. Oh no, it's locked. I don't use this one, so we'll see what happens. I think I need to get my other one from upstairs, maybe. Oh, no, we got it. Okay. Or not. We did not get it. Hey guys, how many people does it take to use a can opener? I'm gonna do it. I'm left-handed, and right-handed can openers feel very weird to me. I have a left-handed can opener upstairs that I usually use, but we'll make this work. Hey, we got it. Okay, I'm not used to using this can opener. I literally bought a can opener to just have down here so I wouldn't have to bring the can openers up and downstairs all the time. Yeah, I'm left-handed, so I'm good. I got it. We're good. My husband's trying to bring me the can opener. All right, we need 2 tablespoons, about 28.5 grams of tomato paste. Give or take. Something like that. He is the goat. Looks like Vegemite. Marmite? Yeah, close enough. Close enough. It's a yeast extract. So Marmite is going to give you almost like a malty beer and but also meaty flavor that you would otherwise not have if you didn't use it. I know that it's common for people to put beer in chili. I guess depending on what you were going for, I would highly recommend probably you could probably do a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup, an excuse to drink the rest of the beer, I guess, in your chili, maybe in place of the chicken stock if you really feel like doing that. So you've got some chicken stock as your base, but the chili paste maybe has beer in it. Why not? Or vice versa, something that I use it to deglaze a pan. If you're going for middle of the road, I want to have beer flavor, but I really want it to blend well, I'd probably suggest using a red ale or an amber ale. If you wanted to pull into a deeper flavor profile, I'd probably suggest using a Doppelbock or a porter. And then if you wanted to really play in on freshness, brightness, acidity, an IPA would probably be your best bet. And absolutely go for it, play around. I don't have it in this recipe. I did try, I think I did put some beer in one of the versions of this, and it just wasn't what I was going for. I wanted the chilies and the meat to be the main, basically tomato, onion, chili, meat, right? That is what I wanted to be the base flavors of this specific chili. And so I stuck with small amounts of things that would build on the depth of flavor, but wouldn't take away or pull away from those main flavors that I wanted to use. And so I ended up I didn't really care for it as much, and I didn't use beer. But I know beer is very common also in chili recipes. Okay, so we need 1/2 tablespoon of Marmite, and that is going to be about, 7.5 by volume, 7.5 milliliters, or 9 grams worth of Marmite. This is probably the one thing that I'm I really should just put this on a spoon and then measure it out with a kitchen scale, because Marmite is super sticky. And to be very honest, something that I have done in the past, if I'm supposed to use this in an umami paste of some kind, I will get this correct, right? Get as much off of this as I can into this, and then I will leave this actually on the side. So I'm not going to just stick this in the sink. I'll probably put this on the plate I was using earlier. And then once I have all of the liquid in my big stew, I will take it and I'll swirl it around and just melt whatever's stuck to this, because I can't get it all off. I'll just melt it, actually, I'll stir it around until it all kind of comes off and dissolves into the soup, so that I get to actually use all of it, because it's really hard to get this all off. I'm gonna sit here and do this. This is gonna be it's really sticky. I've seen people do where you can what is it called? You get a spray, a canola spray or cooking spray or something. And you can, what's it called? You can spray in this, and then it'll kind of slide out. I've never had that work particularly well with Marmite, even it's just so thick. So yeah, the better than bouillon, the paste, the beef paste or chicken paste or whatever, the soup stock paste, are also very similar. They're super sticky. I just stole your pro tip. Oh no. Oh, the oil, yeah. Yeah, it works. So like I've got some molasses going in. It would work with the molasses. It would work with honey sometimes is still a little too thick. Agave would work. It depends on the viscosity, to be honest. But it is a good tip to do that. I do that a lot with baking, especially when I'm using things like agave or like golden syrup or something like that I know is going to stick into a measuring spoon or something like that, or a measuring cup. This is just a little too thick, so it doesn't work quite as well. I also need a teaspoon of molasses. This is where I'm getting my sweetness from. So you might also see, so I talked a little bit about chocolate earlier, where like sweetness can come from chocolate. You might also see quite a few recipes use brown sugar or just sugar in general to add a little bit of sweetness into the chili. I prefer molasses. Again, I'm thinking depth of flavor, right? So I'm getting a little bit of like that sulfur compound. So it's gonna really, really bring out, like kind of construct the bottom flavors in the chili. It's also gonna add sweetness and it's going to make it like a little earthy and kind of play into the mushroom powder and some of the pepper profiles and things like that I'm using. So that's just a teaspoon, which is 5 milliliters or about 7 grams of molasses. But you can see how the difference in viscosity between this and the marmite, and how this would probably work a little bit better with like a spray. Like if I had sprayed this, it would slide out a little easier than the marmite does. Okay, I think I've got one more thing. We've got some soy sauce to add. If you are gluten-free, you can use tamari, and that will be good too. I actually prefer tamari. I think it's got a better flavor profile than soy sauce, but I don't currently have any in my house, so we're using some soy sauce. I'm going to use a tablespoon, which is about 15 milliliters or 16.3 grams if you're using a kitchen scale. I try really hard to make sure that I've got all the gram measurements, even for liquid. I just feel like it ends up being easier if you can just keep dumping in, zeroing out your scale and just dumping in the ingredients that you need. Okay, so this is everything. Okay, this is everything that is going to make our chili paste. I'm still gonna leave this here. I'm just gonna set it aside. We're gonna let it sit for just a little bit longer. It's been in there for a good, I guess, 10 minutes at this point. We're gonna just let it go for another time while I'm doing some more prep. Those are gonna get swirled into our chili later. And then I'm gonna prep for the rest of our stuff. So from now on, right, everything that I'm gonna be doing is in preparation for making the, like, kind of once the chili is going, and we're just kind of like adding things. So we've kind of made a single recipe, right? So our single recipe here, we've made chili paste, and it's sitting there and we're good. And now I'm going to kind of build and prep all the components that are going to get added to my single Dutch oven back here. I will bring that up front here so we can watch with the camera when I get cooking. But it's really important now to kind of get your mise en place kind of set up and ready to go. Because once you get started, you just kind of are getting to a point and adding it. There's not time to chop or prep or measure or do any of that. You just kind of go. A lot of soups and stews and stuff like that work that way. Especially, I think probably the single most important one to do that for is like gumbo, because you have that roux kind of so hot and ready to go, and you cannot step away from the stovetop to do other things because you're supposed to be constantly stirring. And so this is kind of that same situation where you have such high heat on your Dutch oven while you're cooking stuff that it's really easy for that fond that you're building up, that flavor you're building up, all that the brown bits and stuff on the bottom of the pot can easily burn if you're not scraping and stirring and doing what you need to be doing. So we prep, right? Okay. So I need to cut up a poblano pepper. This is more poblano than I need. I only need about 75 grams, but I felt like having a little bit more poblano flavor in my stuff today. I'm gonna switch out my knives. We're gonna use this guy. What's going on? I've got chat making jokes. We got jokes here. So to prep your poblano pepper, cut the top off. You're gonna kind of go down the membrane and get the seeds out, and then you just kind of have a little cone there. Also gonna pop the top. We are gonna cut this up as well. Probably could also be wearing gloves for this, but there's far less capsaicin in this, so it's not as bad. Yay, nightshades. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut kind of the end off, and then I am going to cut down this way, so I now have a nice flat surface to chop. Okay, and I am going to do kind of the same thing with this guy. So I've just got like some nice pieces to kind of get into. Cutting round things can be difficult. So if you can make yourself kind of a flat surface, it makes it a lot easier. Okay, so what I am now going to do is I'm essentially going to cut strips, and then we're going to turn them, and then we're going to cut, and we're going to kind of do like a small dice. You can make your dices as big or little as you want. Again, I prefer to kind of small dice both the onion and the poblano, just because I want the flavors to really blend in and not have like chunks of things that really like pop flavor wise and change the flavor profile of the chili. I want it to kind of be aside from like getting maybe a bean or a piece of the meat or something like that, like a chunk of the meat. I want all of the other flavors to really just blend and marry very well. And so I prefer to do some smaller dices for these guys. So I'm just gonna kind of make some really small pieces and then do the same thing and cut. So we're gonna have some little small poblano pieces. And I am gonna go short instead of long. If you notice, there's like a bit of a curve going on here. So it's easier for me to just have straight and then just have different length pieces than it is for me to try to go along the other way. And it's not gonna be perfect, and again, that's fine. Doesn't have to be perfect. They just have to be kind of similar. We're not in like some crazy French whatever kitchen where like every size cube needs to be exactly the same. It's not like that. So you're gonna choke up on your knife. Make sure you tuck your fingers, please. Curl your fingers, tuck your thumb in. You don't want your thumb out and then you're like cooking and oh gosh, or chopping. The safest thing that you can do, the best thing you could do in your kitchen to make yourself safe is to have really sharp knives. Dull knives hurt and they slide and they don't cut through things well enough. You should be making sure that your knives are sharpened at least like once a month, basically, depending on how much you use them. You should have a honing rod of some kind to help with the why is my brain not working? I keep wanting to say bevel. I mean, I guess that works. Burr, thank you, to keep the burr nice and sharp in the interims, but in between your sharpening sessions. You can take them in, like take your knives in. If you're not sure what to do and you're worried you're gonna hurt your knives, take them in somewhere. A lot of kitchen supply stores will sharpen knives and they'll do like, I think it's like $1 per like inch of the blade or something like that. And they'll sharpen your knives for you if you're too worried to do it on your own. But yeah, if you get to something and you're like trying to cut like usually tomatoes are the like biggest culprit of that. And if you like don't have a slicer, which is like a specific knife meant for like tomatoes and peppers and things that have like this kind of skin, this like really slick skin on the outside. If you're using a knife and you're having trouble kind of slicing through that and it takes a while, you probably need to sharpen your knives. Just FYI. gonna try to get them in a bit of a group. If also, like, I'm cutting this in a huge pile, if you need to just do a little at a time, you can just do a little at a time. Do one at a time. Like, whatever works for you, whatever you feel like you can focus on, and like not kind of be all over the place, like do that. Like, be safe when you're prepping and chopping and all that kind of stuff. Like, I've got all different kinds of sizes here, you know. You can make, it's a lot easier if you make a smaller pile to kind of maintain the same size of what you're dicing as you're going. Just because there's like less flying all over the place and rolling around. Ace Hardware will sharpen your knives for like $7. Hey, I like that tip. That's cool. Yeah, the best way to hold them can be rough. When you're sharpening a knife against like a whetstone, you need to have a specific degree as you're kind of moving your knife around. There are a lot of kits that come with like whetstones and like the different, oh my goodness, I keep thinking about sandpaper grit, the different grit on either side of your stones. It'll come with a piece that you clip onto the back of it, and it should keep you at the correct angle as you're kind of pushing your knife around on the stone. I know, like, once you get used to it, it's kind of becomes obsolete, but when you're just starting out, it's a good tool to have, and it usually comes in a kit. Like, it'll usually have that in there. I didn't know Ace Hardware sharpened knives. That's so good. That's such a good tip. Thank you for saying that. I feel like these chunks are going to be a little different just because it was like the end of the pepper. Not much I can do here. Okay. And last but not least, and then we're going to move on to our onion. These do kind of get added around the same time in the chili, but the onions get added first and then the peppers go in next. So I'm actually going to put them on separate plates and keep them separate from each other. Okay, let's grab some more plates. I didn't feel like buying a cheap knife to train myself. Yeah, I guess you could do that. Like, you could buy, if you really wanted to, figure out how to sharpen knives and you don't want to hurt like one of your good knives, to get a cheaper knife and just play around. It's probably a great idea, actually. A little practice knife. Okay, now for onion. My eyes will probably water. I have little baby sensitive eyes to sulfuric compounds. Yay. So again, different ways, different things that you can do for onion when you're chopping onion. I think the best possible thing that you could do is to cut it underneath a kitchen vent and have the vent running so it pulls the fumes up away from your face and up into the vent. I do not have a vent because it's over there and I don't want to put my back to you guys. So we're going to see how well this goes. The best thing that you can do is to have a really sharp knife. Again, I'm sitting here talking about sharp knives. The sharper the knife, the less you're crushing the cellular structure in your onion and the more you're slicing through it. The cleaner the slice, the less compounds are like put into the air, the less irritation on your eyes. Another thing that I tend to do is I'll kind of do it in batches and I will wipe off my knife, wipe off my cutting board, and then put onion underneath a wet paper towel. The moisture in the paper towel kind of traps some of those sulfuric compounds, and it keeps it from really kind of flowing into your face. And so, yeah. The absolute best thing you can do is wear contacts. I didn't realize how sensitive I was to onions because I used to wear contacts, and then I developed dry eyes, and I can't wear contacts anymore. And now I have to cry and deal. I thought I was like superhuman. I was like, I don't have that problem. It's crazy. You guys have all these problems with onions. Yeah, it's because I had contacts in. So, oh yeah. Okay, so what you're gonna do, you're gonna cut off the top, cut off the bottom, or actually no, just cut off the top, and you're gonna leave, so the top here, right, is where this kind of your stalk would have been, your leafy stalk there, and then you got that. The bottom is roots. Leave the roots intact, and then because we're dicing, what we're gonna do is we're gonna chop that in half, so we can cut half each time. And see, I'm stopping. I know I'm gonna have tears in my eyes. And you're gonna leave the roots intact here as we kind of slice up in order to dice. They're going to hold the onion together so it doesn't start falling all over the place. Taking the skin off. Keep the top and the bottom of your onions and use them in your chicken stocks or in any of your stocks or vegetable stocks or whatever you got going on. Don't throw them away. Any gamba on when the tears start? Honestly, like I'm already feeling it. I hate onion skin, guys. This is like onion and garlic, like peeling onion and garlic is my absolute least favorite thing to do. It's so frustrating. It's like picking tape off of a box. You know, like how like if you get like tape and you're trying to like, or like stickers, and it's like it just breaks and so annoying. Hate it. If anybody has a good tip for getting that off, other than running it like under, I like sometimes running it under water and just kind of like helpful. Is there a reason I chose a yellow onion over a white onion? Because I keep yellow onions in my house. There's no reason. It will add, so like different onions, for those of you, that was a really good question. Thank you, Gimp. For anybody who's curious, obviously different onions have different flavor profiles. Yellow onions, sweet onions, tend to be on the sweeter side. A yellow onion is like middle of the ground. It's onion flavor, a little sweet, a little bit of acidity, just kind of playing it safe, staying in the middle, you know, staying in this lane. A white onion is going to be crisp and acidic, and it is really going to draw attention. White onion is typically what is used in Mexican cooking. So if you were going to make like a pico de gallo or something like that, it is like that is the kind of go-to onion for any of that. It is just a very, very sharp onion, brings a lot of prominent flavor into a dish. And then I guess if you were going to go into like an actual, like, I guess, trying to think, like a Spanish onion is probably, they're like the really big ones that you use for like a bloomin' onion. Those are super, super sweet. And so I guess it just kind of depends, but I'm just using a yellow onion because it's the middle of the road. I didn't go all the way sweet and I didn't go all the way into sharpness with the white onion. But you could use a white onion for sure. You could definitely use a white onion for this. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've grown so accustomed to white onion, mainly for Mexican food. Yellow onion tends to be much more earthy to me too. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I've only ever heard it described as like kind of a middle sweetness, like it's like that middle ground. But yeah, that makes sense. Your eyes are tearing up just looking at the onions. I haven't actually cut anything yet, so I'm still okay, but it's about to happen. It's about to happen. I feel like I need to buckle down. The problem is that I stopped to talk. And I need to just like buckle down and chop these and like not not talk to y'all while I'm doing this. So you can do this a couple of different ways. You can chop kind of halfway up first or second, and then you're gonna kind of make all of your little dices. I don't know if I like one way or over the other. I know for a while I was doing, I think, this way first and then slicing into it, just because sometimes if I slice this way first, when I started going kind of down, the sides would pop off because I like cut through them. But yeah, I could wear goggles. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of come in a little bit at an angle here before I start getting into, and you're gonna go as far up as you can without cutting through the roots in whatever distance, like, so the dice size is gonna be determined by how thin the slices across are, and then I'm gonna go halfway up and give that a slice, and now this is gonna get diced, and this is gonna become my dices that are gonna go under here. So kind of the same thing that we did with the peppers, you're gonna just kind of cut straight down and go for it. When the sides start to pop out like this, I tend to just kind of do one of these and like bring them all in line and then go back. But that's just me. This is a me thing. And then that's done. So this is gonna go in here as quickly as I can get it. Gonna wipe my blade. I'm gonna wipe my surface here, and then I'm gonna cover these with my wet paper towel and make sure that they're not getting their fumes in my eyes. That's what I do. Okay, and then same thing. We're gonna do kind of going all the way up. And like I said, the sharper the blade, the less you're crushing the cellular structure, the less fumes you're gonna get from your onion. Okay. Interesting. She cuts so oddly. There we go. Okay. I'm gonna remove these from my site. Honestly, I want to toss them in the refrigerator, just get them out of the way. I made it, I think. So far, so good. We still gotta get these into the bowl. Slice the onions radially? Oh my God, I can't even imagine. I'll have to look that up. One of the people in our chat said that J. Kenji Lopez Alt, who wrote The Food Lab, which is an exceptional book and does a lot of like food science and food experimentation and how he's cooking to come up with just like new and different ways to do things, sometimes better. That he cuts it radially. That feels weird. So I'll have to look that up. That seems neat. Thanks guys. Okay, my eyes are starting to feel, whoo, they're feeling it. I'm moving all the things away a little bit. Oh my goodness. Okay. So we've got our onions and our poblano chopped. Still got some pieces here and there. Clean up a little bit. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna move on to the chuck roast. I'm gonna trim it. Different knife. Whew. You're gonna need 2 to 2.5 pounds of chuck roast. I do not have gloves for the chuck roast because I am cooking at home. But I found, so this is kind of what, if you, I guess, depending on where you are, I usually buy chuck roast from Costco because you get a lot more and I can have like the exact amount that I want so that if I trim down, like you always kind of have to think about like, if I need a certain amount of meat, by the time I'm done trimming, you kind of overbuy, understanding that you're going to lose some of the mass and lose some of the volume as you trim down the fat. It is okay to have fat. It's actually good to have some fat in your meat because it will cook down and flavor your soups and stews and sauces and all sorts of stuff much better than if you had something like a filet. A filet has like very little flavor. The more fat and connective tissue you have in a cut of meat, the more flavor you're going to have in that meat. However, the more connective tissue you have in a cut of meat, the tougher it is going to be, which is why things like chuck roast and oxtail and short ribs and things like that are just great all-around meats to use for soups and stews because they cook low and slow, and that low and slow allows the connective tissue to break down and really soften and tenderize the meat. If you were doing something that was like, I'm searing this and I'm eating it as a steak, you would not want something like a chuck roast. You would want something more like a ribeye that has the fat marbled kind of like this and not big kind of chunks of it. I do, even though I know I'm going to be trimming off quite a bit of this fat, I do really like to try to find chuck roasts that have this marbling in it. A lot of them don't. So if you're at the store, look for something that's you'll have kind of a single band of fat running through. Sometimes there'll be bigger bands. So I look for like smaller bands of like kind of these chunks here of fat. And then if I can find anything with marbling on kind of either side, that's the cut that I'm going to purchase over some of the other ones that don't have that. Because this is all flavor and this is all going to be tender. And that is what you want. So yeah. You want grams. You're looking for 1.6 to 2.3 kilograms of chuck roast. Oh, I said 2.5. It's 3.5 to 5 pounds. I'm going to have less meat in this one because I was not paying attention. So we got this. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to, when I trim, I'm cutting off the bigger chunks of fat, and I'm also going to cut off the silver skin. Silver skin is like a really hard membrane that connects different pieces of meat. There's like a really hard something going on here. I'll see if I can find here. Got right here. It connects the different sides and it just never breaks down. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're taking kind of those pieces off. And it just doesn't, you can kind of see here. It's got, they call it silver skin because it's not iridescent, but it's almost like if it had like a shimmer to it. It's got like a sheen, and that like fat is fine. Like this kind of fat here is good. Like that'll just melt down, but this is not going to. And so we want to make sure that we take that off. And I'm just going to cut this into kind of large chunks. The smaller bite-sized situation is going to come later. So if I chopped this all into those little like bite-sized pieces that I wanted to have in the stew at the end, if I put this into a pot, into my Dutch oven to sear it, it'll start to sear, and then as they heat up, as the meat heats up, it'll let off moisture. And then you're never going to get that nice brown fond that you would if you seared off like kind of larger pieces, little at a time, so you don't crowd your pan and you don't have all of that liquid kind of releasing. It'll still do a little bit of it, but as long as your pot or your pan isn't crowded, then it'll be able to kind of create that crust and create that sear. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to add, again, it's all of those small kind of steps to add extra flavor. And this is one of them, is to sear off larger pieces and then chop them up into chunks later so that I'm getting some of that really nice golden brown fond into my chili as I'm adding the meat back in. And you will notice, like when I go to chop up this later into the bite-sized pieces, that some of it will be raw and some of it will be seared, and that's okay. All of those seared bits are going to add flavor in to my chili later on. So it's not like you don't technically need to sear off the meat. You could just cut up the chunks and toss them in, but you're not nearly going to get as strong of a beef flavor if you're not doing that searing and you're not kind of allowing that flavor to develop. So yeah. Okay. So let's I'm gonna just trim off some of these guys. You see I've got a little bit of that here. I'm gonna end up taking that off. And then I am gonna run this knife kind of down this really fatty section here, and I'm going to just take that off. Okay. Get to watch me do this for a little bit. Okay. And then the same thing, I've got another big piece of fat here that I'm just going to trim off. That's why I really like to have, like, you don't have to trim it all off because like I said, fat adds flavor, but that's why I like to find cuts of meat that have the marbleization in it, because I know that I'm going to be trimming so much of the fat off. Honestly, it's mostly because my husband's tummy doesn't do fat very well. So I trim a lot of it off. And I look for the marbleization because I know that I'm losing all of these kind of nice big chunks of fat, and I don't want to do that. So, okay, so I've got a couple of chunks here. Let's get this silver skin off this. And basically what you're doing is you're just kind of pulling, you can see these kind of striations here. That is going to tighten up and be really tough. And you can just kind of like get a little bit of the flap and then pull and kind of run your knife down. Oh, do this side too. So I'll show you again. So we're going to get just a little bit of that up, and then we're going to kind of just pull along the meat, and you're going to get just that skin off. So pull out and run along the meat as you pull. Okay. I also like, I prefer, if I'm trimming off fat, like I prefer to keep the fat that's really hard. But sometimes you'll come across fat that's like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like, it's almost like thin fabric. And it's not, it's just like kind of goopy. It's not silver skin, but it's like kind of, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain it. I don't like this fat either. And I find that like when because I'll grind up cuts of meat for burgers, for meatballs or something like that. It always gets stuck in the gears. And if it's not grinding down, it kind of makes me feel like it's probably not going to cook down well either. And so I avoid that as well. A little bit of goop. What do you call that, guys? Realizing how dull your knives are after seeing me slice through this so easy. Yeah. So like I would prefer to keep this, especially like if I'm grinding down for like burgers or something. This is excellent fat. Like this is perfect for burgers to have kind of in the mix. Got a little bit of silver skin here. Looks like it starts. There. Okay. And we're going to call that good. Do this. Okay. So we're trimmed. Got my chuck roast here, kind of in like bigger chunks. Obviously, like I'm not gonna give this to somebody in chili, right? We're gonna cut this down later, but I want to sear off these pieces in kind of batches. So I've got that all set up to go. Trying to think of what else. Is there anything else that I can do right now? let's just finish measuring everything out and wash my hands real quick. We've only got a couple of ingredients left, and then we will be good to go. And we'll be ready. It's just like a really soft, stringy fat. And I just can't imagine that becomes a good texture. Do I not have a kitchen towel? There we go. I can't imagine that it ends up being a good texture later on. So I tend to avoid it, to be very, very honest. Okay, I'm gonna move this back here so we have some more space. This is probably ready to go, but I'm gonna finish doing the rest of the ingredients, measuring out the rest of the ingredients, and then we'll blend it. I'm gonna give it as much time as I possibly can before I move on. Clean up just a touch. Okay, so I've got some cans to open. The last couple of things that we're gonna do, I'm gonna get my crushed tomatoes open. If you have whole tomatoes, like whole peeled tomatoes, that's also fine. You can pour your whole peeled tomatoes into a bowl and you can kind of hand crush them. I do suggest when it comes to whole tomatoes, there's the top section where the stem hit the top of the tomato. There's usually like a yellow kind of circle that's got a really tough part of the tomato. I do suggest that you pinch those off and toss those and then crush the rest of the tomato so that, because that doesn't cook down and you get like chunks of tomato that are like hard and nobody wants that texture. You could also just take a hand blender, like an immersion blender, and you can toss that down into the can of your whole tomatoes, and that will do a very fine job of like kind of crushing and making kind of like a rustic puree, so to speak. And you can use that as well if you don't have a can of crushed tomatoes. That will also work. That is not on. Okay, pay attention. Oh no. I hate can openers. That is not even in. Okay, I'm getting the left-handed can opener. My husband left it. I'm gonna grab it. We're doing it. We are doing it. It's just so much easier. And then these ones have pull tabs, so that's even better, right? Okay, so tomatoes. The efficiency, I know, I'm just so used to using it. Okay, I'm gonna drain and rinse my beans. I don't like the liquid that they're canned with, so I rinse them. A safety can opener, believe it. Yeah, I like, so like none of the edges of the cans are sharp with this can opener, which I really like as well. Somebody just asked if we have a pizza oven. We do, yes. I make pizza all the time. I have a pizza recipe on my website if you're interested in it. It's a Neapolitan style pizza, and it's very good. Yeah, so somebody still uses the bean juice. So I had to say, like, I strain in a colander in the sink and I rinse them. When you're rinsing things like garbanzo beans or canned beans of any kind, I've got some kidney beans here. I think I wrote in the notes, I've got 3 cans of kidney beans they're 15.5 ounces per can, about 349 grams per can. And you can use light or dark kidney beans. It doesn't matter. It's up to you and what you visually want to see. They taste the same. But when you're rinsing them, rinse until you don't see any more bubbles or foam. And then you know that you've gotten all of the juice from the cans out. The juice that ends up in with canned beans, cannellini beans, kidney beans, pinto beans, garbanzo beans, like whatever you're doing, that liquid is like aquafaba, right? So something that a lot of vegans, vegetarians, and stuff will use for a foaming agent instead of using egg white in a cocktail. And so to me, it adds a flavor in a cocktail that I don't really prefer. But I understand the necessity, but it foams, right? And so that it's like a thick kind of consistency, and it gets really foamy. And so it's gone, right? When that foam is not there anymore. If you're rinsing with water, that kind of like foaminess, you'll see it start to foam, and then as it rinses, it'll go away. So that's how you know that you've done all the rinsing and you're ready to go, is when you don't see that anymore. Yeah. So we have some oregano. Got some Mexican oregano here. I am going to add this. This is kind of stuff that you don't technically need to measure out, because it doesn't get added until after you've like deglazed your pan, added your chicken stock in, and there's not really a lot of like crazy, scary, fast cooking going on. But I'm just gonna measure them out anyway, because like, why not? I am using some dried Mexican oregano. If you can get fresh oregano, I highly recommend that you do not add it in where I am going to add it in. I add it in before the chili simmers for about 2 hours. I do highly recommend adding fresh herbs within 30 minutes of cooking, of like eating your dish. So if you are simmering and doing your thing on a stovetop with the chili, add in any fresh herbs that you want to add in. If you want to add some thyme, if you want to add some oregano, if you want to add, I don't even know, some parsley, whatever you're looking at, add it in 30 minutes before you eat. That's going to allow the herbs to really blend in, but not become bitter and not lose their flavor. Like, you'll still be able to taste them. But yeah, usually like dried spices go at the very beginning. Dried herbs are going to go kind of somewhere in the middle, at least an hour of cook time. And then the fresh herbs are going to be within like a 30-minute window of you eating it, so that you get them at peak flavor and they blend the best into the dish. If I added, let's call it that. Okay, cool. So now we're gonna measure out, let's see, the vinegar and the oregano. I'm only gonna be using about a tablespoon of vinegar. Vinegar is what I would consider a finishing ingredient, which is why it's like at the end of the list and at the end of the instructions. Essentially, it's going to just add a brightness to your chili. If you want to add lime juice instead, also an option. I prefer vinegar because it's cleaner. If you want to use a distilled white vinegar, it's going to be super, super clean. I like the apple cider vinegar just because it adds a hint of sweetness that you wouldn't otherwise have. So it's just like another way for me to add sweetness without adding like directly like sugar or something that is like just sweet. I'm getting kind of two elements of taste there instead of just adding straight sugar. So like with the molasses, I'm getting an earthiness and a depth along with the sweetness. And then with this, I'm getting an acidity along with the sweetness. So we're going to do only 1 tablespoon. I've seen recipes that add up to like a 1/4 cup. I haven't found that this needs it. And I think it's probably just because I have chicken stock in here, and chicken stock as a base instead of like maybe beef stock is so light that when you start adding vinegar, it gets like very acidic and very tart very fast. And so I don't typically use more than that, but because it's a finishing ingredient, it's one of those things that like I'll taste it and then go, does it need salt? Does it need more acid? Does it need some sweetness? Like that kind of a thing, and how best to balance. But yeah. Okay. We need a tablespoon, which I just used. Okay, I'm gonna measure this guy out with a kitchen scale. It's only 2.5 grams. But I already used both sides of my tablespoon, so we're gonna just measure it out this way. Yellow. Okay. I find Mexican oregano to be brighter and more savory than like an Italian oregano. You can substitute, but there is a flavor difference. It's really up to you about how many spices you want to have in your house. I am insane, so it works. It really depends. And then we are also going to measure out some masa harina, which is corn flour. Just really finely ground dried corn that you would use. What do I want to use? I just need something to use as like a little bowl. You would essentially use this if you were going to make like tortillas or tamales or something like that. I like to use this as a thickener. And also I really like the added subtle corn flavor that it gives to chili. This was one of the tips that I know we talked earlier about J. Kenji Lopez Alt. Sorry, my brain's a little all over the place. We talked a little bit about him earlier. This was one of the things that he puts in his chili that I was like, that's super smart. So like a lot of the times, either chili is left with no thickener, right? So it's just kind of like soupy, and you get like kind of the chunks of meat that you've got in there, the seared off like, little chunks of meat, and then maybe beans, and then it's like soupy around that. And I find the difference, the viscosity difference between the sauce and the stew and then the chunked ingredients in it. That's such a terrible word. I don't like that imbalance. I feel like it's too big of a difference. And so I like to add a thickener to most of my stews and soups and things, so that they kind of stay on the tongue a little bit longer. This, like typically you might see, if somebody's going to do that, you might see them start with a roux, right? So flour and equal parts flour and fat. That gets cooked down until the flour flavor is kind of cooked out, and then that gets used to thicken. You might also see people using cornstarch, which I find works in a lot of cases, but like a cornstarch slurry added sometimes can feel a little bit slippery. I know that's it's a weird way to describe it, but it thickens it and it gives it a specific texture that I also didn't want. And I found that specific tip in his chili recipe worked very well, and so I have also included it here. Masa harina is a thickener for a traditional Texas red. Okay, interesting. Easy to carry on trails. That makes sense. Nice. I'm getting all sorts of fun stuff. Thanks, chat. Okay, this is 3 tablespoons, about 25.5 grams. I'm gonna measure this one. I'm gonna weigh this one out too. I still don't have my. We're gonna use the spoon. Let's do it. I have pan. I have pan. I have a couple of different ones. I like the Hacienda. I feel like it's more finely ground, and it hydrates really well. But I've got Maseca upstairs. I've got pan upstairs. Pan I like to use for pupusas. It just depends. Like I said, I have like an individual ingredient for like any individual thing, any recipe. So yeah. Yeah, or arepas, yeah. All right. That's good enough. Okay, we have measured out everything except for the very last ingredient, which is not necessary. So I'll get to talking about that when we get there. Now it's time to cook. I am going to do a lot of deglazing in between, like while I'm searing off the meat, just because, like I said, I don't have a vent, and I really can't let anything get close enough to burning. Like I don't know where our smoke detectors are, but I have to be really careful. Usually, I would let stuff just get like really dark and like build up a really, really good fond, but I'm not gonna do that today. I don't want to set a fire alarm off. And I want to be really careful about that. So I'm gonna fill up a cup with some water, and I'm gonna use that to kind of deglaze in between rounds of searing meat as we go. Okay. You have different flours for different applications. I have more types of flour in this house. Got bread flour, rye flour, cake flour, pastry flour. I've got 2 different kinds of all-purpose flour. I have double O flour. I've got all the corn flours. I've got almond flour. Got the gluten-free 1-to-1 baking flour. I've got all kinds of flours in this house, and it is not a problem. It is not. So many. I know. It's fun. It's fun when like you find a recipe and you can just kind of like, I'm like, I've got the ingredients for that. Let's play. It's always nice. Okay. Let's get going. Got my Dutch oven. And actually, the last thing that I'm going to do before I get started, I've got 2 things to do before I get started, actually. I've got some chicken stock. I've got not all of the chicken stock. I've already used the cup and a half, remember? The 360 mils that I've got in the chili paste there. And then I've got the rest of the chicken stock that's necessary for this recipe on the burner, only I didn't do all of it. I need 1 more. So we're going to just make sure that I add 1 more cup. I can get it out. I usually let these sit for a little bit so that they slide out easier. Maybe. Like an ice cube tray. There we go. Okay. Toss this in here and make sure this is hot too. It doesn't necessarily need to be liquid when you're deglazing. I prefer to have it already be liquid just because it'll deglaze faster than if I put like a frozen block of chicken stock into the soup or the pot. But it works. Okay. Is there anything else? I feel like I'm forgetting something. I'm good. Okay, so you got the rest of the chicken stock going, and it is time to blend. So I'm gonna do that real quick. It shouldn't be, I feel like there's a noise gate on this, so it shouldn't be too loud, but we'll see how this goes. Okay. So we've got our chili paste all ready to go. I will probably pour some of the chicken stock into this so that I can get all the stuff off the sides as well. But it's mostly good to go. I know that there was. We're gonna just do this just for display purposes so that you guys can see what this looks like. So this you can really smell it. Like this is like such a flavor base for this whole dish. It's got so much going on in it. I'm so excited. Okay, like I said, like I can't get all of this out. So I am going to be putting some chicken stock in here and just kind of swirling it around and using the chicken stock to really dissolve the rest of the paste to get it into the chili. But just for now, that's what it looks like. That's your chili paste. I do want to have most of it available to like add to the bottom of the pot and really get even some more deeper flavors. A lot of the stuff, especially like the garlic, right? It went in fresh. And so I want to be able to cook some of that and add even more depth of flavor by cooking the paste in the pot once we get there. So let's do that. We'll get our onions and our poblanos. We're kind of setting everything up now so that everything is ready when it's time to start adding stuff. Okay, turn this on. We're gonna get it at a relatively high heat, so it's gonna take maybe a minute or so to get up there. I feel like we've got all of the things. I kind of skipped a step. It's not super important. So after the chunks of meat get trimmed in my instructions, I have to add some oil and salt to them and then let them sit. That's really supposed to be like as a tenderizer and kind of flavor enhancer for the meat. I wouldn't call that super important because this is getting tossed into the chili and simmering in there for a really long time. So all of that flavor is going to impregnate the meat as it cooks over time anyway. If this were for like a roast or a steak or something like that, where like the cut of meat itself is the only thing you're tasting, I definitely believe in dry brining and making sure that you're salting things well in advance, both for tenderization and for flavor to kind of bring that salt. It'll pull moisture out and then suck all of that like kind of saline solution back into the meat the longer it sits. And just overall makes a much better flavored cut of meat. But like I said, like this is getting chopped down into tiny pieces. It's getting cooked for 2 hours in the chili. Not quite as important as time and the fact that that flavor is going to get it anyway. So it is something in here as not something that you technically need to do. It will maybe slightly enhance it, but not enough that I'm really going to care about the fact that I didn't do it. Yeah, anytime you're gonna have a chunk of meat by itself and in like bite-sized pieces, or you're cutting it to eat it instead of it being shredded, or something that's like kind of tender enough to be having with a sauce or whatever, like it just dry brining is the way to go. I love dry brining wings. Dry brining wings is like so good. And I have a wing recipe, and then I also have a prime rib recipe. And I dry brine my prime rib for like 3 or 4 days. Like, very good. Yeah, dry brining wings gets them super crispy. And they stay so tender. They're so good. Okay, I am, in fact, going to add some of this now. I'm kind of just going to get some in my hands. I don't want to go off the cutting board, so I'm trying to be careful. But I am going to get this kind of coated. The thing about searing on a surface that is not a nonstick surface, it will unstick. Like it will become nonstick when enough crust is made. And honestly, like these were, okay, also one other thing. These were pretty dry. If there's still moisture sitting on the surface of your meat, and especially if you've added the salt to it, you're gonna need to pat them dry. Any water or moisture that you have on the surface of a protein when added to heat is immediately going to like connect it really, really like almost like glue right to the bottom of your pot. Now, I will also say, and it spatters, right, because you're adding oil, so your oil and water don't mix. That's something else that you have to kind of consider. When you build up enough of a crust, it will unstick itself. So just remember that. Like, just leave it. Don't keep trying to move things. Don't keep trying to whatever. If you want to like test it and do like a little bit of a wiggle or something like that, you can. But just know, like, when it's ready, it will unstick. See, I've got smoke coming up. I'm nervous. I'm nervous about not having a vent. We'll see. But yeah, just let it sear. Let it go to town. Let it build up that crust. Let it build up that flavor. Let it do its thing. Do we have any questions? How are we feeling? We've got all of our ingredients ready to go. We're starting searing the meat, getting things together. How are we feeling? Good? Feeling hungry? That's funny. I've only got this on medium. Typically, I would sear at a higher temperature, but again, I don't have a vent. So you can see now, this is kind of creating enough of a crust that we're unsticking, right? That parts of it are kind of getting there. If you want to keep testing, you can, but like I wouldn't pull too hard. Like you don't want it to release before it's ready. Don't force it. Yes, there is good marbling. That's on purpose. There is very good marbling on the roast. You're the exact opposite side, then don't add the corn flour or cornmeal or whatever thickener, cornstarch, any of that, and just leave it. I am finding it harder to find ingredients in Colorado than it was in Florida. Not nearly enough. Okay, so this is going to be hard because I'm worried about the temperature. And I'm not getting as good of a sear as I want to have, but also I really don't want to burn anything. So like this is a good color. Ugh. This brown, this is what you're looking for. This, not so much. You want it to be really brown and crispy. And I'm not going to get that because I'm being too careful with the heat. So it is what it is, I guess. I went up a little hotter. We're going to see what we can get. Yeah, I'm finding it a lot harder. There aren't nearly as many like restaurants and stores and things that sell the ingredients that I would typically find. I'm having to go to like online sources for stuff a lot more, unfortunately, or making things at home. Oh, apparently, for those of you who are live on Twitch, if you are not currently a subscriber, we've got an ad break coming in about a minute, so just be aware. And I apologize, it's built into the platform. But nothing is really going to happen, right? So I'm doing kind of 2 rounds. So the same thing that is happening here is going to be happening while you're in your ad break. So you won't miss anything. Yeah, I prefer cooking on my my full induction stovetop. Part of the reason that I'm getting some of this like uneven browning, so you'll see like this is not quite as brown as like other parts, is because this burner is so small. So everything needs to be really concentrated to the center. When you are cooking on your stovetop, here's a good one. There you go. So you want that. That's nice. Because it's right in the middle. When you're cooking on your stovetop, match the burner size to the pot size. Okay, so if you have a burner that's larger than the pot you're using, it's not good. It's going to heat all weird. It's going to be really weird. And then the same thing goes if you have a really small burner and you're putting this huge pot on it. Maybe if you're doing like a stock, that would be fine just because the whole thing is kind of going in liquid and it's like you're braising and it's not a huge deal. But if you're actively trying to like sear, cook, saute something, the bottom of the pan should match exactly the burner that it's on. Yeah, and then this one is not doing anything because it's so far off the burner. It is what it is. We do what we can. But you can see like it's coming up, right? So like once you've created that crust, now that I flipped this one, it's stuck again. Once you create that crust, it's going to slide around and move around, and you've essentially created a nonstick surface. But I am going to develop, you'll see I'm kind of getting a little bit of browning on the bottom of the pot here. We're getting a little bit of fond. I'm going to increase the temperature a little bit more. And that is a good thing. That is flavor. I'm also crowding them up quite a bit, which I shouldn't be doing, but it is what it is. We're going to get the sides too. So you're going to do top and bottom, and then you're going to try to get around all the sides. Now I know when we cut kind of into chunks like this, you end up with oblong pieces. They're a little all over the place. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just know that any amount of brown that you have on the outside of these like cuts of meat are going to be added flavor, right? So just the more browning you have, kind of the searing you have, the better. That does not mean that you want to cook all the way through. You still want to have like a raw inside. You're really just trying to get that sear on the outside for some added flavor. We don't want to toughen the meat. And so we're not going to cook all the way through. We're just going to kind of do what we can for flavor and then call it a day. You can smell it. It smells so good. Add in some of the other pizzas. You guys got me thinking about pizza with a pizza oven. You want it to be rare in the middle and seared on the outside. That's what you're going for. I'm gonna see if I can get some more crust on that. I think the ads are done. I don't see a timer anymore. Starting to get a little bit of smoke. I might have to deglaze this in a second. Scrape up some of those brown bits. Make it real nice. Okay. I'm gonna be good with that. And I am putting it right back on the board that had the raw meat on it. It's gonna get, like I said, it's gonna get chopped up. It's gonna go right back in, and then it's gonna cook for 2 hours in a simmering stew. So I'm not too worried. There is a camera above me. We have an overhead cam. Okay. Add in our last couple pieces. I think we're still doing a little okay. I might actually, you know what? We're gonna. Okay, so basically what I'm doing right now is I'm just doing a little bit of a deglaze. Just because I was starting to see the little bits in here get a little bit darker than I wanted them to. And so I'm just going to scrape up the bottom. I probably added a little bit more water than I wanted to, but just to be safe. Like I said, I don't have a vent, so I'm trying to be safe. Let's see. What do I want to use for this? I don't have a bowl. I can get another one. All right, this is still going to kind of re-stick, but I got most of it out, right? And I kind of just, and this is going to go into the chili, because why wouldn't you? We don't want to lose any of that flavor. But now I've kind of cleared up this guy. I do need to bring the temperature up higher again to make sure that this is going to end up searing. Usually I would let it sit and reheat a little bit, but I'm just, for time purposes, we're going to just go for it. And I am going to kind of move the steak around the pot a little bit and just really make sure that I've got all those brown bits kind of pulled up so we're back to a nice cooking surface. Dumped it in the chili paste. Yeah, I honestly almost did that. I thought about it and I was like, that would be good. But I want this to be thick because I need it to stick and cook to the bottom, and the more moisture is, the longer it takes for it to cook down. So yeah, we're just gonna set it aside in another bowl. It'll get added later. Either way would have worked. Because we added water, there is a little bit of moisture on the surface of this. Most of it is gone, but the meat itself, like you can see that it's not currently searing the same way as these guys did when I first put them in because it was a dry pan. I am making chili. I'm making a chuck roast chili. I'm very excited about it. Kind of peppers am I using? I've got a mix of pasilla, guajillo, ancho, chile de árbol, and morita peppers. I'm gonna have to look it up. I didn't realize there was like specifically, my assumption is that anything in Colorado just has the hatch green chilies in it. So, extremely on brand, yeah. You know me. Okay, so now we're creating crust here. These guys are nice and stuck. I'm gonna leave them that way. You can see some of that brown is redeveloping. That's fine. We're gonna deglaze that later when we add in our onions. I'm actually going to add all of the salt at once when I add in my onions. I could go by feel and then just like for taste later, but we'll stick to what I had. We're almost done with the meat. But like, how good is that? Look at that crust. So good. Deglaze is to put a liquid in to scrape stuck bits on the bottom of the pan. Yes. So the stuck bits on the bottom of the pan is usually called a fond, F-O-N-D. And then you deglaze with any kind of liquid. So in this case, we're actually going to deglaze the pan with the onions and some salt because they release moisture, and that will help me deglaze the pan. You can deglaze with, I've got crushed tomatoes over here. In some recipes, you might see wine, white wine or red wine. You might see people deglazing with stock. You can also deglaze with water. If you know, in my opinion, it's kind of one of those things where like you can deglaze with water, but if you know that you have other things that have more flavor, why not deglaze with things with flavor? And so that's kind of why I'm doing that. But let's see. All right, we're gonna add the paste in. So I've got a really hot pot, okay? Now I'm gonna cook down, so the same way that sometimes you'll see in recipes, people will put like tomato paste down, and they'll add tomato paste to the pot to give an added depth of flavor so that that tomato kind of gets even sweeter and like a deeper flavor. I'm doing the same thing with this chili paste. I've got a couple of ingredients in here that I think will taste even better, especially the garlic, once they've got a little bit of a toast on them, a little bit more of a cooked flavor. And so I am doing that. And then we're gonna add the onions in. So I'm adding this in. I want it to brown a little bit. I want it to stick to the bottom of the pan a little bit. I want it to cook down a little bit, and then I'm gonna add the onions in. See, so you can see I've got this browning kind of going on the bottom of the stock pot here. And then I'm gonna add my onions and salt in. If you feel like you're too close to burning and you're really, really nervous about the onions not working quick enough, you can add some liquid in too. That's okay. It smells really good. Okay, toss in our onions. And I believe I had salt. It's a half of a teaspoon of salt, I believe is what I had in there. Oh no, I need 1.5 teaspoons of salt total for the dish, so I guess let me add them in all now. I was supposed to add some salt to the meat, and I didn't do it earlier, so we're just gonna add it now. There we go. The onions are going to release moisture, and they're gonna let me scrape this fond up from the bottom. No smoke alarm has gone off yet, so I'm feeling very fortunate right now. The last ingredient I did not mention, Wonder Dog decided that they were going to come into the chat and give away the surprise. The vodka gets added at the end, about 10 minutes before you eat, depending on what you want it to do. I could talk about that in a little bit. I've got this about medium power now. So I did have it kind of up a medium-high heat when I was doing my searing, and now I've got it down to a medium. I want to cook just until I see that the onions are starting to soften, and the edges of the onions are not quite as rigid. Obviously, it's hard to see the translucence of the onions because you have all of the chili paste around it. But you'll start to tell, like they'll get softer around the edges. They won't look like clean cuts. And it cooks pretty fast when you've got it with all of that liquid and the sauce kind of around it. Onions tend to caramelize a lot faster when you've got liquid surrounding them. Whoops, I read the recipe. No, that's good. You came prepared. I appreciate you reading the recipe. I like it. I like it. You guys get to see my liquor cabinet today. Usually I don't go in there when I'm down here. It's right behind me, right here. This whole thing is just full of liqueurs and spirits. But you can see that whole big section there. I had this huge spot of the paste that was like stuck to the bottom of the pan. And now I can just super easy scrape it up. Okay. I'm at a good place with the onions. I'm going to add in my poblanos. And then I'm going to also add in the oregano. I do want, that hit me in the face. I do want to make sure I'm adding my oregano in now. It's a dried herb, right? And so we want to add it at the beginning so that it can rehydrate in the paste. It'll get nice and toasted because it's still kind of dry, but then it also starts to rehydrate. It gives it time to really add itself to the flavor of the dish. If it were a fresh herb, I would not add it until the end or near the end. Make sure I get all that in there. But because it is dried, we're adding it now. Smells really good. Okay. Where are we back here with our chicken stock? Cool. I am pretty... Now we want the poblanos to start to soften the same way that the onions did. So again, you're just going to look for the edges to not be so crisp. That's basically the only thing that you can kind of use as a visualization, a visual indicator of like where you are. I'm going to also increase the heat a little bit. We've got so much liquid that's come out of our vegetables that I'm now going to just add in a little bit more heat to kind of bring that fond back. It does smell really good. Especially now that the poblanos went in, like I'm getting a lot of fresh like vegetable pepper smell in along with all of the other stuff. It's really nice. Gonna I'm gonna do a thing while this is going. I'm gonna add a little bit of chicken stock into this guy. I don't know where my lid went. Oh, there it is. I'm just gonna reblend this a little bit. And then kind of swirl it around and get some of the parts off of it. Okay, so you can see I'm starting to develop that fond again. That's what I want. I want it to be hot enough to re-deglaze. You can see that the shape of all of the diced vegetables is like kind of, it looks like it's mushy. That's what we're looking for. Okay, and we're gonna pour that in. And there we go. Re-deglazing a pot without my spatula. Here she is. Okay. So again, like I built that fond back up, and now I am deglazing again. We're gonna turn the temperature down because now we're getting to a point where now we're slowing down, right? So now we've got some liquid in here. I'm gonna add in my chicken stock. Whoop. Do that there. Okay. We're gonna add in the beans. We're gonna cut the meat into bite-sized chunks, and that's gonna get added. Okay. I really like the color blue, in case nobody's noticed. When we found this house and we were looking at it and noticed that it had like enough, like it had the kitchen downstairs that I could use for like production and for streaming, and the backsplash was blue and white, I was like, it's perfect. We did it. We found it. We found the one. Okay, I'm gonna kind of scoot this so that I can chop up the meat. You guys can watch me do that. Let's get this out of the way. Honestly, I should be clearing spaces up. I'm gonna just do this real quick. I'm gonna add in the rest of these, and then I'm gonna get to chopping up that and getting the meat in. It's kind of another one of those things that like you could just, why not? Let the intrusive thoughts win sometimes, friends. Let's do it. Why not? There we go. Got it all out. And our beans. And a little bit of fond we scraped up earlier. Intrusive thoughts make the best recipes. I agree. Wholeheartedly. Fully agree on that one. I set that in a sink with some soap. So it looks like we're going to be using this. Okay. So these have now rested. Okay. So that's part of it is like you're searing it and then you have to kind of take it out. And I like that I have a couple of steps before coming back to this. If you cut this immediately, you would be losing a lot of the moisture. Obviously, like they're not cooked all the way through. They're still mostly around the middle. So like that's not gonna be affected, but there's gonna be like a seam that's in between the sear and where the raw meat is that you would lose moisture from if you immediately cut into it and cut it into the bite-sized pieces and then set it aside. So it's best to sear it, set it aside, and then kind of come back to it. And now I'm gonna be cutting them up into essentially whatever size I feel like having as my final kind of product. Final pieces. So you can see I've got kind of raw and then around. And I'm going to do these just in some chunks. Just like that. Obviously, like this is going to end up cooking all the way through. But this is going, like this sear won't be here by the time you go to eat it, but this flavor will be added into that. And so that is what's important. This looks so good. Good, I'm glad. Go make it, and then you can taste how good it is too. Chili tartare, yeah, right? For now. And I'm kind of doing the same thing that I did before, right? Where I'm kind of going with whatever's going to give me some nice, like it doesn't bother me that they're different shapes. Like I'm going to end up cutting them to the size that I want. Like because we like cut them in kind of like odd pieces as we were trimming. But that's okay. Just turn every piece into a little strip. And go for it. I may have to try now. The chef crock-pot has always taken care of your chili. I haven't owned a crock-pot in a really long time. I have a mild interest in an instant pot just because it does pressure cooking. But I find that like the burnt, like the heating element in a crock-pot, and then the need to add a lid that like really keeps all of the liquid and moisture in creates too high of a temperature even on low settings, that like the stuff that sits at the bottom at like the bottom of a burner, and then the stuff that's kind of like sitting at top, like they feel like they cook unevenly, and sometimes stuff on the bottom will burn, and like it creates a bit of a pressurized environment that like, especially if you're doing something that's like braised or like low and slow, I feel like it just never keeps a low enough temperature in a crock pot. And I've been very dissatisfied with the toughness of the proteins that come out of a crock pot. And so I stopped using them. I used to have one, and for like in college, and I attempted using it so many times because I didn't have time to sit and do this the way that I wanted to, and the results just were never what I wanted it to be. So I stopped using crock pots a long time ago. Any benefits to trying the meat as one big piece versus smaller hunks? I mean, the smaller pieces give me more browning, so a little more flavor there. I would probably keep it as like, I'd probably still cut it into strips, even if I didn't have to trim the fat, because like essentially the reason we have these smaller hunks is because we trimmed all of the fat and silver skin from around them, and this was just kind of like the natural sizes and pieces that I pulled off of the roast. But you can, I mean, if you end up with something that can stay one big piece, that's fine. You're just gonna have less sear on the outside of it. It really doesn't matter that much. Tempted to try this recipe on a big green egg and add some smoke. Yo, some smoked chili would be so good. I mean, honestly, okay. In all honesty, though, is like you could use some chipotle peppers in your chili paste, and that would give you plenty of smoke. Like if you're really looking for something to be a little bit like add a little bit of smoke, just use some chipotle peppers. But you could do that. I bet you it would be really good if you like toss this into a smoker and got it really nice. But there are ways around if you don't have a smoker, for sure. Almost done. Liquid smoke in the chili, yeah. That's actually, I almost said liquid smoke. That's funny that you say that. Because I was going to say, you could also just add a couple of drops of liquid smoke in, and that would easily do what it needed to do. Yeah, the crock pot is nice because you can just, like, what is it? Set it and forget it, right? Is that what the whole thing is? I get the want to do that, but also, like, I could do this and then, or like, even like for ragouts and stuff like that, it's like I have more control over the flavor, I have more control over the ingredients and how they're cooked. And then I can just let them sit, especially for like, if I was, like I mentioned a ragout, it's like 6 hours, you know? Or if I was gonna do like a pulled pork or something like that and do like a mojo pork kind of situation, and I was just gonna braise it, it's like 6 to 8 hours in the oven. Like, it's basically a crock pot. It's just in my oven. Now you could make this, like I've got this recipe, the instructions have it for stovetop, but you can absolutely make it in the oven. I do think that I had, let's see. Yeah, if you want to do it in an oven, if you want to cook this in an oven, I would probably tell you to put it at about 200 Fahrenheit, so about 93, give or take, Celsius. I wouldn't go much higher than that. And then put a lid on it, stick it in the oven, put it on like a half sheet baking tray, like one of these guys, like a cookie tray, so that if any moisture does kind of come from around the lids, it doesn't drop into your oven. Typically I will do that if it's like a double batch, because then it's like kind of up pretty high and it might bubble out a little bit. So I put it on like a baking tray, and then the baking tray with the Dutch oven goes into the oven. But the reason to keep such a low temperature is because I don't ever want this to come to like a rolling boil, right? So like you want to see like a couple of like pops of little bubbles like here and there. You obviously want it to be hot enough to cook all of the ingredients that are in this and stay hot enough over that course of time to keep cooking the ingredients all the way through. But if it comes to a rolling boil, there's too much agitation. So the way that boiling liquid works, and this is kind of like it's gonna be an interesting conversation. So the way that boiling liquid works is all liquid is the same temperature, right? Like if it's boiling, it's hit boiling point. I can't say it's all the same temperature. That's not true. But you've hit the temperature at which you hit boiling. If it's a rolling boil, because that conduction is going on and everything is like moving around, right? The ingredients at the top are the same temperature as the ingredients at the bottom. Everything is all boiling, right? And that's going to toughen up your meat. If you cook it at a simmer, the stuff at the very bottom, right, is going to be that high temperature, that boiling temperature. But the stuff at the top is actually lower than boiling because it's closer to the surface. And so it's going to move around. It's going to move around slower. But you're going to get a much more tender meat because you're cooking it low and slow, because you're not getting all of that movement that you would be getting if it was a rolling boil. And so you kind of, it's the low and slow is staying away from having all of that movement, if that's helpful. And then like kind of going in and every now and then just giving a mix yourself and manually moving the ingredients around. Putting a lid on, like I said, does increase the temperature a little bit because you're trapping that heat. So it is getting a little bit cooked from bottom and top, but it's not nearly the same as if it were like a rolling boil. Okay. We're at the last bits of this. I need to add we're gonna add in these guys. Got our vinegar and a little bit of our corn flour. I'm gonna mix these in. This is now, if you're cooking along with me, I'm essentially stopping here. This is going to cook for another 2 hours, 2.5 hours. and then it's going to be eaten. I am going to give this a little bit of time, maybe like 30 minutes or so, and then I'm going to give it a taste, and I'm gonna see if there's any kind of balancing that needs to happen. I'm gonna do that twice. So I'm gonna do that about 30 minutes in, because right now we've just added all the ingredients. They haven't married together, they've not been cooking together for long enough, the meat just got put in, it hasn't been cooked all the way through. I'm gonna let this go until everything has at least sat for 30 minutes. I'm gonna give it a taste. I'm gonna see, does it need sweetness? Is it too bitter? Do I need to add a little bit of acidity or some salt or whatever that looks like? Give it a taste. I'm gonna balance out like anything that's going on. It should be, you shouldn't have to do anything, but just in case, like there, and then I will do it again about 30 minutes before we eat it. I'll give it another taste. I'll see where it is. Does it need more salt? Do I need to add a little bit more vinegar, like some sugar, like any of that kind of stuff? And I'll give it another like just quick taste and see where we are. But you can see like I like my chili to be like nice and thick. So this is where we are. And then somebody did mention vodka. That is the very last thing that you do. I don't think I even have vodka in here. You can add tequila. It's fine. So I would say using a rye whiskey, using a tequila, using a vodka would probably be your best bet for a liquor. You want it to be a higher proofed alcohol. You don't want to add a liqueur or anything with like other flavors or sweetness or something like that. Now, it is like so optional. This is such an optional thing. It's not going to do anything to the actual taste of the dish, but it is going to enhance the flavor. And this is another thing that I picked up, a high proof rye, yeah. This is a thing also that I picked up from J. Kenji Lopez because he's incredible, is alcohol evaporates faster than water. And because it evaporates faster than water, you get more aroma kind of coming up into your olfactory senses. And so it increases the receptors for flavor, and it will actually taste more flavorful than it would without it. I know it's food science, yay for the win, right? It seems like hocus pocus, it's really not. But you would add it about 10 minutes or so before you ate the dish, just so that it has long enough to, again, blend in, right, with your chili, with the other ingredients that have been sitting for 2 hours, right? But it's just a really nice finisher to then give it like an immediate flavor boost. Not important. It's not important to the dish. It's just if you want to try it out and you want to see how it works, go ahead and do that. I will be adding it to this. But it is not, for those of us who do not drink, do not want alcohol in our dishes, like you do not need to add it. It's just a really quick, like food science way to boost the flavor of something without really doing anything other than like pouring and dumping and mixing. So, yeah. Is this like when recipes say to add a Guinness? I mean, it depends on when it's added. It could be if you add any alcohol at the end, it will increase the aroma, which will increase the flavor of the dish. If it's added, so like I mentioned, some people will add beer into their chili. It's typically used to deglaze the pan, and then it sits in here for 2 hours. Alcohol cooks out almost completely in about 4 hours. So you will still have a little bit more aroma, but it will mostly be gone if you add it in before, if you add it in so far in advance. So. Okay. I think that's everything. Chili is, again, like most soups and stews, it's better the next day. The longer that it sits, the better it tastes. It's going to be good in your refrigerator for 2 to 3 days, and then I really suggest that you freeze it. I will put it into individual like Tupperware containers, enough for like a single meal or something like that, and I let it sit in my freezer for about 2 months. That usually doesn't last that long, but that's about the amount of time I think that it's probably good in the fridge before it'll start taking on other flavors. So yeah, so 2 to 3 days in your fridge, 2 months in your freezer, and it reheats really well. You can reheat it in the microwave. I do highly recommend, obviously, like we work so hard to have these like tender pieces of meat that like if you put it in the microwave, sometimes that can toughen the meat up a little bit. But typically, as long as you're reheating something in liquid, it's not going to toughen it that much. So it's really like an easy thing to heat up even in the microwave, or if you just put it on the stovetop, put a lid on a pot and like let it set on low until it kind of comes back up to temperature. That's, yeah, good to go. We eat this as is in itself by a bowl. Sometimes we've got some cornbread to go with it. Sometimes we eat it over rice. It's really good over tater tots with some cheddar cheese on top, or with mac and cheese. Well, we also like to do that. I'll make like mac and cheese, and we'll have mac and cheese and chili. Yeah, I don't know. Does anybody have any last minute questions before I peace out over here? I'm gonna cover this and let this sit. It's time. So yeah, so this goes for another 2.5 hours. I guess what you're looking for doneness is you want the meat to be tender. So that is your indicator, like less than time or any of that, as long as you've got your temperature down on like low and you've got like just a gentle simmer going. When that meat is the texture that you want it to be is when this is done. I don't like when it starts to kind of shred or fall apart. I like to get this, I like to take it off the burner before that. I really like the point at which you could probably use a fork to break it apart, or like kind of, it kind of falls apart as you're chewing it, but it's not falling apart on its own, is kind of like the point with which I like the meat to be. But it's really up to you. If you wanted to have the meat kind of just cooked through, or like almost cooked through, and have almost like a medium kind of situation in the center of the meat, you could like finish this even sooner if you really wanted to, and have it on for far less time and then eat it. But I really like to have kind of like a tender, almost fall apart meat. So it's not spicy. This is not a spicy, I can taste it. This is not a spicy chili. No, because I would say that this, at least for me, it's not spicy. I would say this is probably mild, approaching the bottom of medium. If you wanted it to be spicy, I would highly recommend adding even more of the chiles de árbol. Those are the dried peppers that we used when we did the chili paste. You can leave some of the seeds of the hotter peppers in the chili paste. I took all the seeds out and got them in the trash and only used the skin of the peppers. You could add some fresh peppers in if you wanted to add like a habanero, and chop that up with your poblano and toss that in as well. You could add like a really nice kick, and habaneros are like really lovely and sweet. So you would add a little bit of extra like sweetness in with the fresh pepper, which could be nice. But I would kind of go in those veins if you wanted to add some more spice to this. Chuck in some Tabasco, call it a day. You could do that as well. That does add a little bit extra vinegar if you're adding in Tabasco, so just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing your balance of your flavors. Do I have a favorite spoon? No. I mean, I have spoons, silverware I've specifically picked out because they're the perfect weight and shape and all of that, but they're upstairs. But I don't know if I have like a favorite spoon. Some Scotch bonnets, there you go. Throw a ghost pepper in, why not? Not very neurodiverse of me. I mean, I only use the small spoons. I don't really like to use tablespoons. I like to use dessert spoons when I eat. Big spoons or no. It's bad. Stick with a little spoon, right? Yeah, like my silverware set is like specifically, I bought them. I bought so many of the same set. Chuck roast. Yeah, I used chuck roast in this. You can also, I think I mentioned earlier, you can use short rib. You can do like a picanha would probably be good. You could do like a bottom round roast, like any kind of like, you see like something that would be used for like a pot roast, you could use for this. Yeah. Oxtail would probably be pretty good, but I feel like oxtail you'd have to cook for a lot longer. You would want, like if you were going to do oxtails, typically like you want it to be fall off the bone. I don't typically go that far with this. And honestly, with oxtail, I'd probably like sear it around the sides and chuck it in and then let it cook in, like braise in this until it fell off. And that, like, I wouldn't be chopping it. I wouldn't be cutting away any of the fat or any of that kind of stuff. Short rib if you're feeling fancy, right? Like that's kind of what it is it's like bang for your buck. The chuck roast is going to be the best cut for you to get. It's cheaper, it's super flavorful, and it works really, really well in any kind of like soup, stew, chili kind of situation. Short rib's more expensive. I find that short rib has a bit of a beefier flavor than chuck roast does. But for the money, to me, it's not worth it. Chuck roast is good. It doesn't make sense to, it's like it'd be like buying, ribeye and putting ribeye in here. Like that just like make the steak, get the chuck roast, use it for this, make a steak elsewhere. Okay. Let me just do a little bit of cleanup, a touch of it, and then we can say goodbye to our, to those of you who are finding this as a non-live stream. I'll do a bit of an outro. Okay. I feel like I should turn this thing off so that I don't have a buzzing in the background. We're going to turn that off for just a second. Today you learned lots of cool stuff? Good. Good. I'm very glad. I'm trying to think if there's any other things that I've seen people add into chili. I've seen people add espresso powder into chili for an additional like earthiness. So espresso powder might be an option. Yeah. What? Yeah. Yep. You've seen that too? Cinnamon. Yeah, I've seen people add cinnamon. I feel like cinnamon, bananas, and like bacon. If you add any amount of that to whatever you're making, it's like all I can taste. I stay away from cinnamon unless I want cinnamon to actually be like really forefront in something. Chocolate too. Yeah, we have some cocoa powder in this chili. I did talk a little bit about chocolate. When I was doing recipe development, I did put like a little bit square of chocolate. I found some Mexican chocolate that was like acidic and floral, and I felt like it would have worked really well. And I added just a touch of it in, and it did not do what I wanted it to do. It was a little too sweet. I could tell it was there. It didn't blend in very well. And so I stuck with the natural cocoa powder, and specifically natural cocoa powder. The Dutch process stuff is a little bit too alkaline. I wanted it to have an acidity and like the floralness that the peppers did, the chili peppers that were dehydrated. Like I wanted it to blend really well, and so I went with a natural cocoa powder. But I did try chocolate, just didn't do what I wanted it to do. Okay. You know what Dutch process is, thanks to Alton Brown. I love that man. Probably too much. He's cool. That man has some ADHD. He is all over the place. but I absolutely love the vibes. And he's so smart and he's so good at teaching. I grew up watching I grew up watching Good Eats when it was on TV. How long does recipe development take? It depends. If it's a cocktail, maybe a night. Might make 10 different batches of something and just kind of tweak and go. But something like this, I think this took a couple of weeks, but it's like over time, right? Like, so I've been making this chili for a really long time and then just kind of like slightly tweaking stuff and like writing down what I'm doing. But it depends. If there's a lot of ingredients and components and like techniques being used, it can take quite a while to really narrow and get something down consistently. If it's something that doesn't have a lot of ingredients or like the technique isn't really difficult, it can go pretty fast. But typically I'm testing something at least 4 times, like 4 different variations of something and tweaking things before I get to a place that I'm either like happy with or I'm like, okay, I think I know what I want to do, but I also want to have like a couple of control tests or something like that. Yeah, I know. When I'm working on drinks. Oh no. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess if you're here with the live, I'm gonna kind of do a quick outro real quick and then I'll stick around for just a couple more minutes and we can hang. But for now, if you were here and you found this on YouTube, you were looking on how to make chili and you wanted to know all about the ingredients and what you needed to be doing, you've got your chili cooking right here. It's going to be sitting for another 2 hours. So congratulations, you've gotten almost to the end. You've done all of the active cooking and now you just need to let it sit and do its passive little job on your stovetop or in your oven, depending on which version you wanted to do. My website at alittlespoon.com does have this recipe and instructions also to cook this in the oven if you really wanted to do that and you didn't want it on a stovetop. But yeah, just let it go. And in a couple hours, you're gonna have an absolutely fantastic chili. If you did want to add the alcohol in at the end, please feel free to do so. It is listed as an ingredient, so you know how much you need to add. I believe that I chose vodka for the ingredient in this recipe, but you are welcome to use something like a rye whiskey or a tequila as well. I feel like they pair very well with this chili. I hope to see you guys next time. If you are looking to find me in other places, I guess, since you found me here on YouTube, I do obviously have a website. I just mentioned it, alittlespoon.com. Got all sorts of stuff just like this, where I attempt as best I can through copy, through writing, to share the same kind of knowledge that I shared with you today in the FAQ section of the website. So you have a full recipe with all of the techniques, all the different ingredients that are really going to help you build flavor, understand what you're doing, and then the FAQs are just there to really support and add to that knowledge. I really like teaching, so kind of a way to do that. I also do have an Instagram. The handle is at _little_spoon. So you can also find me there. I do post recipes. I've got a little bit of a change coming for content on Instagram, but I'm still working on it. So, but you can DM me anytime you want there. I'm happy to help if anybody has any questions. Please feel free to send me a DM, either an email through my website contact page or on Instagram. If you make a recipe and you like a recipe, please give it some stars, write a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. I have had people ask questions in the comments. Also cool. If you have a question about a specific recipe that you're working on, you can put it here into this YouTube comment section, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Or if you're on the website, going from the website, ask a question there. I'm try to stay as on top of comments and questions as best I can, so I can get on and give you better information. If you're going through and you have some questions, like please ask. And then, yeah, I think that might be it. I have a Patreon. If you want to lurk, You are welcome to support through Patreon. It's as little as $1 a month. They make you have a paid thing. I kind of wanted it to be whatever anybody could afford. But the lowest I could set it to was $1. So there's like tiers that are there. And it's just basically to help support all of this. I don't have ads on my website. And so the Patreon really kind of helps to mitigate the need for ads. But you could lurk and just kind of say, hey, I'm going to support this person and call it a day. But if you are a Patreon member, I do also have a private Discord server. We talk about food. It's a really great place to kind of, share recipes, talk about travel, where are we going, where are we eating, and we just have an all around good time. So hope to see any of you there if it is something that you want to do. And thanks very much for joining me. I hope you guys had a good time. Bye.